Hi, good to see some familiar faces. My name is Florian Glatz. I'm building an application called Commonground. I want to tell you about it today, but also sort of some observations that we found that motivated us to build it in this particular way. I've even prepared a little agenda. So initially, I want to talk a little bit about online collaboration today. What's the state of online collaboration? I want to do some honest observations about that. Then I want to talk about interesting or useful Web3 primitives that we're seeing that relate to online collaboration and how they could make it better. And then I want to talk about something that we call the CommunityHyperstructure, riffing off of this cool meme of hyperstructures. So online collaboration today, I don't know if any of you have seen this really cool video that was released just a few days ago by Rational Animations. It's amazing. Watch this video. It's called The Goddess of Everything Else. So I took the animations from there. I don't own the copyright, so I hope that's okay. Yeah, we believe that online communities today are fundamentally broken. They're really held back by this Web 2 infrastructure, as we like to say it in Web 3. Online communities have a really hard time getting anything done. Any of you that have ever used Discord would probably agree. It's a pretty noisy environment. It's not really conducive to collaborative work. And if you read the news, you can actually get the sense that everybody agrees on this. But for some weird reason, we're not moving forward on this particular problem domain. And so that's what we, took upon ourselves to change. I think you can put it like this. Communities today are stuck in a local maximum. And that's really a shitty place to be because it takes a lot of energy to leave a local maximum because things seem sort of fine. Discord, for example, or Telegram, which we all, I think, use a lot, they seem sort of fine. But then when you actually want to create a DAO, you want to create a decentralized project of any kind, you're building a blockchain ecosystem possibly, you find that there are a lot of coordination tools missing. There are Sybil attacks, there are security attacks, there is spam, there are all these problems. And I even believe that what we call DAO tooling today, it's not being adopted because it's actually worse than the Web 2 tooling that we're using. So people prefer to use Discord, they prefer to use Slack and all these other things and Telegram because the sort of tools we build at the moment don't really cut it. So what's the problem? Discord literally means conflict and dissonance and disagreement. That's literally what Discord means if you look it up in the dictionary, which I think says it all. It's like Moloch is laughing us in the face and is like, ha ha ha, you idiots. It has no native Web3 integrations, as we all know. It does have a bot API, but this bot API doesn't allow you to retrofit a Web3 identity onto your Discord accounts, right? And this is why we see all these security attacks. But also, it's a company that's fundamentally opposed to Web3 values. It's shareholder owned, it doesn't have a token, and it's not interested in giving back to you as a user that's creating actually the value of this platform. The DAO tooling today, I already mentioned it. Obviously, no offense to anyone building DAO tooling today, I love you. But the problem, I think, is that it requires a lot of specialized knowledge. It starts with, please log in with your wallet. Well, maybe you don't know what a wallet is, but you're running a valuable community, right? It's not inclusive to Web 2 people at all. And I think it's based on a very narrow definition of governance in the first place. Governance is not just vote with your tokens, right? And I think we're all getting to a point where we understand this. So what needs to happen? We believe at Commonground that we need to start with the atomic unit of coordination, and that is communication. We need to fix the communication stack and tools that we use today. And it needs to be inclusive to Web 2 communities because they are actually the ones that can sustain us financially and in all other ways, because that's where the masses are. Web 3 is too small of a market. And of course, it needs to be public good infrastructure that we're going to adopt as a space. If you're going to plot today's collaboration solutions on an Econ 101 chart, you can do it in this way, where you have on the horizontal axis insular versus permeable solutions. So meaning, WhatsApp and those sorts of, private group chat type tools like Telegram, they are very insular. They are not easily discoverable or accessible for the public, versus permeable, like easy to find on the internet, easy to join, something like Reddit. And on the y-axis, you can divide it in between cooperative solutions that are set up for high interaction and collaborative work between users, and more casual, informal communication between people, right? And as Commonground, we obviously want to be in this top right corner where it's permeable, meaning everybody has an easy time finding and joining your community, and it's set up to be conducive to collaborative work between people. The way Slack is collaborative for individual teams, but map this onto a decentralized community space. All right, and we just believe that nobody is building for this top right corner at the moment, and that's why I believe we're sort of stuck in this local maximum of Discord. So now I want to talk about some useful Web3 primitives that I think help us to change the situation fundamentally. So I'll go through a bunch of them. So verifiable credentials and proof of personhood are, I think, essential ingredients to build spaces where, people are able to identify as actual humans, where you can trust that one account is actually just one person, or vice versa. We see different solutions emerging. We see, proof of humanity. We see WorldCoin, which are like two solutions at different ends of a spectrum. There is obviously Gitcoin Passport, which is sort of in between. They use Web2 credentials to establish civil resistance. So there's a lot of innovation, I think, happening on the civil resistance side. Polygon ID is also, I think, going there. I've read a thread yesterday on Twitter where it was all about civil resistance as a desirable property of the system, which I agree with. It's super important, so thank you for working on that. The other aspect is on-chain reputation, which I think ties directly into civil resistance. You need civil resistance to build on-chain reputation. So I think we see a great progress on both these fronts. I think another interesting mechanism that we're seeing is various gating mechanisms being implemented. That's something we also did really early in our Commonground stack. So the ability to have communities that have public spaces and private spaces. So you can imagine a DAO that has a very, very easily accessible space, but then also a space for token holders that are involved in governance, and various degrees of accessibility within a community. Another one that I will touch upon in the next few slides a little bit is community-owned accounts. I think this is completely neglected so far. Just as an example, if you're running a decentralized finance project today, and you're sort of in this gray area of legality where you don't really know, well, is our DAO decentralized enough, or is it not under the various regulations that are coming out today? If you're the owner of the Discord, if you created the Discord community for this particular DAO that is doing some on-chain stuff, you are in a really, tough position from a legal liability perspective, because obviously it's this communication space where decisions are being made about doing deployments on chain, making token movements. Obviously, Alex Pertsev from Tornado Cash, obviously, there were leaked communications from him that led to his arrest. So this is a very sensitive area where I think going forward, what you actually want is you want a communication space that was created by no one or by everyone. Right? So the idea that the super admin is not one guy who signed up with a mobile phone number on Discord, but actually the super admin should just be the community itself. It should be an NFT possibly, and those kinds of things. I also find it really interesting to think about multisigs in a new way. So what is actually a multisig and who can control a multisig in which way? So I framed this under community-owned accounts. And then obviously governance and co-ownership principles are also interesting building blocks. So meshing this all together in a really, simple to use communications app, that's what we want to do with Commonground. I mentioned it before, I think the tools that we build need to be conducive to Web 2 communities because they are the ones that are going to carry us forward. We can't just build for this tiny space that is Web 3 at the moment. I believe the creator economy is really, really interesting because they have massive communities and they have very little tools at the moment to interact with the communities that they are building. So podcasters, video creators, YouTubers, TikTokers, all these people are actually desperate for good community solutions, which we could provide to them and thereby onboard them into Web3. Quickly on this idea of this community-owned accounts, so I mentioned it today, if you are the one person that created the Discord for a particular DAO that is running a DeFi protocol, you're extremely, in the legal liability realm for this. So what we've implemented in Commonground is this idea of an NFT as a super admin. The NFT has some on-chain information about who are the actual admins and moderators in the community. This NFT can be managed by a multisig that is governed by the DAO, and then the DAO can just, through proposals, change who is the admin of the community. So it's much harder to rug pull a community. It's much harder to, identify who is that one guy who's now legally responsible for the actions of that DAO. We're also experimenting with the question of what's actually a DAO. Is a DAO maybe just a community with a multisig, right? Could it be that simple? Does it have to have anything else to it? So here we've experimented with this idea of a book club. That book club, has a multisig, and then people can pay into this multisig, and there are different ways to withdraw funds from that multisig. So I think there's some really, really interesting potential in making multisigs sort of social software that's accessible to normies. All right. Last chapter, community hyperstructure. That's sort of this, end goal where we want to go, and what could this look like? To me, this idea of a community hyperstructure really means this idea of an interconnected network of diverse communities. Something that is, about cross-collaboration, shared governance, shared resources, shared value flows between communities, and something that transcends, traditional borders and power structures, and that is just, open and participatory. I think we can get there, but it needs to be, embedded in software that is actually usable for people. We're actually starting with ecosystems as the first step to get there. So what we've seen is that in software like Discord today or other collaboration software, every community is identical from a hierarchical point of view. There is no overarching sort of no overarching way to bring together communities. And in crypto, we have this idea of ecosystems of layer ones, layer twos, which are actually, building communities and other sort of, are growing communities. So ecosystems are an opportunity, I believe, to make a new kind of software like Commonground actually attractive for communities to move over, because you can say, okay, I'm building on Polygon. I will create my community in Commonground in the Polygon ecosystem. I get access to resources. Other people that also build on Polygon can discover me. I can apply for grants. I can build a reputation in this ecosystem. And then, maybe I can expand as a community and say, okay, now I'm also expanding to whatever, the Solana ecosystem, because they are also nice people, right? So by building the software from the ground up, we have an opportunity to bring ecosystems as a new hierarchical order into community collaboration software, which to us, has the opportunity to bring together way more people in a way more coherent manner. So the idea of what it could look like is that you have Commonground as this sort of huge, actually cooperatively organized, I will talk about this in a moment, platform that houses ecosystems, and within these ecosystems there are many communities which can, be part of multiple ecosystems or just one ecosystem, and it's just a really discoverable, easy to understand sort of place to get started and to collaborate with others. In terms of community ownership, I just want to talk a little bit how we do this at Commonground, because I think it's unusual. It's not really been done before. So what we've done is we've created a DAO that is developing this Commonground software. But then this DAO is not going to operate that software. We're actually going to incorporate a cooperative which is going to be owned by the ecosystems, the communities, the people using Commonground. And while the DAO itself is a non-profit entity, the cooperative is for profit. And what that means is that the people running the platform and benefiting from the platform are also the ones that can monetize the platform and receive dividends from it. So it's a really interesting setup where you have a for-profit cooperative that's owned by the users, you have a non-profit DAO that is sort of building the software and licenses the IP to the cooperative, and it's all coordinated through a token. So it's a pretty cool setup if you believe in the power of cooperatives. It also has some really nice benefits that, for example, the Commonground token is a utility token by its nature, but it allows you to buy a stake in this cooperative, and by buying a stake in the cooperative, you actually receive, the legal rights to receive dividends from this platform. So it's a really innovative concept, I believe, that hopefully finds other projects adopting it in the future. And I think what's really cool about this cooperative as well is that the cooperative can function as a sort of legal liability layer. So the cooperative can actually get licenses for, providing financial market infrastructure, and the communities and ecosystems building or are being part of this cooperative can benefit from these licenses and actually get compliance from that. So we can have shared compliance primitives between communities, ecosystems, projects, which I think in the future where, DeFi and CeFi and ReFi and everything is going to be way more regulated, will be a hugely beneficial infrastructure for projects, because they don't have to, pay lawyers for compliance. They just get the compliance from the ecosystem or this cooperative that we're building. And that's it. That's Commonground, what we're working on. Thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any questions, I'm very happy to answer them. Thank you. Yes, please.
So do you already have a feeling on what kind of features these content creators need? Because I think it's actually really interesting. We saw some content creators creating own chat rooms that they then laid over the Twitch streams, and then as well over the YouTube to have the same chat in all the streaming services. And you have these moderators that have special eyes as well in the community. So it's a super exciting idea actually. Do you have already more insights on what they?
Yeah, we're talking to content creators. We're making user interviews to understand it. And it's funny you mentioned the chat, because this is a big problem. I think the biggest problem we have with content creators in the streaming area is actually how Twitch conducts its business, because they prohibit content creators from doing multi-platform streaming, for example. You're not allowed to stream on multiple platforms at the same time as a Twitch streamer, for example. Otherwise, you're being demonetized, for example, right? So what we found out, what they want is they want places where they can turn their audience into a community. That's sort of the main thing that they're looking for. And there are platforms in Web2 like Fanhouse and Passes and a bunch of others that streamers and content creators use to actually get in touch with the people that follow them on these social media platforms. And I think if we're building something that's compelling for these content creators, where they can build community and where they can actually start monetizing and actually retain, 100% or 90% of what they receive as subscription revenue from these followers, then it's a really compelling offering that they won't say no to. And yeah, it's a huge market. So I think content creators could be huge for Web3. But so far, the software that we've been building just doesn't. It's not convenient for. It just doesn't. It's not on the standard that they are used to, right? So getting this right. So here you can see sort of what we're building in Commonground. We're trying to build this mobile-first application that has streaming built in, and it just feels like a Web2 app. But in the background, it does the stuff with these Web3 technologies. That's sort of the idea. But what we also found, we're working on this now for a year and a half. It's extremely hard to build software on the quality of Facebook and TikTok, and it's really hard. So Web3 is hard, but Web2 is also incredibly hard. So getting this right it just takes time. Yeah, thank you.